Lanier,
Here.
Griggs,
Here.
Blackman,
Here.
Paredes,
Here.
Fleetstra,
Here.
Forrest.
Here, and a quorum is present. May I have a motion to open the floor to a public hearing regarding the budget?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Griggs,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Fleetstra,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Forrest.
Yes, and the motion is passed. Budget overview is presented by Ms. Fran Labella.
Good evening. I know you've all had plenty of time to digest the rather lengthy book that I gave you about a month ago. We talked the last time about the actual budget. You are looking at approximately just shy of a $5 million deficit. 4 million of that being construction project that you intentionally decided to use cash balances to do the HVAC projects at Flossmoor Hills and Western Avenue. There is an additional, million or so deficit for operations. Spend an awful lot of time looking at taxes and how the collection of them because of the abatement starts flowing into this year. So think about it this way. You know that your first installment is always 55% of the prior year. Well, the prior year we did not have the abatement. So our first installment, which was in the last fiscal year, is actually artificially high because none of the abatement was taken into account for it. So the majority of that abatement is hitting us in this fiscal year. And then next year you see it take a little artificial bump back up again as it sort of writes itself out. We're going to get into this a whole lot more when we start talking levy next month so that you can see how it flows through. Why am I bringing this up? Because when you look at the projections that I gave you in the board packet, it's that pretty little chart. It's kind of the blues and greens. You'll see that we go all the way down in our projections for this year, actually our budget for this year in 2021, and then we kind of flatten out into the 4-year projection. So if our revenues hold at 93% collect and the evidence-based funding is not cut and we manage to at least keep it flat, if not even grow a little bit, we should be able to definitely go back into a position where we have a balanced budget. I'm not saying that we won't have to make some cuts, but it shouldn't be any dramatic decreases. So I'm going to be looking further into this as I continue working on the projections. Like I said, we'll talk a lot more about property tax revenues when we get into the levy next month. But I do not believe the future is as bleak as some would like to make it look like when you're looking at a $5 million deficit, especially remembering that most of it was very much intentional and by design. The last thing I did want to mention was that we have been watching the second installment of the property taxes, the ones that were due in August, although they're really kind of due in October since there's no penalties for late until October 1st. We've projected a 93% collection rate. As of the end of August, we're at 88% collected. So a whole lot of that revenue has already come in and it continues to come in through the month of September. I'll be reporting that to you every time we meet until we kind of know where we are after the October 1st deadline. Questions?
Can you remind me, Fran, whether that is 88% collected at this point of the year good or bad? Or
88% collected for those taxes. I would expect to see 88% collected in like July, beginning of August normally. So I'm actually pretty okay with where we're at. I think we're going to be okay. I'm very curious to see what comes in the month of September, especially with a lot of people holding off paying them. If they're paying themselves out of pocket, they would have, held off until an October 1st date as opposed to paying it on the August 1st date. But it does look like a lot of businesses and homes that were escrowed, the banks have made the payments.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So, Fran, just for clarity, the deficit, obviously, the lion's share of that is construction, so that's not real.
Correct.
How much of the million plus that's left is, how much should we assume that as being a real deficit?
Oh, like I said, I'm watching the taxes really closely, and I'm still looking at our projections for next year, although I've had 3 people who I respect seriously look at my numbers, and all 3 came back and said, no, I think you're right. This is a strange little dip because of the abatement and how that played into collections. So from that perspective, I would say about 300 to 500,000 would be a conservative estimate.
Okay. Any other questions for Fran? Any questions from the awesome finance committee?
We have talked at length about this, so I am good. No offense to Fran.
None taken.
Okay.
The only thing I will ask you is that in the next week, if you can make arrangements with Courtney to stop by Normandy Villa to sign off on the documents after you've voted later on in the agenda.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? If there are no other questions or comments, then I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion to close the public hearing regarding the budget.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Paredes,
Yes.
Nelson,
yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion is passed. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dan, you could roll into your superintendent's report any questions, comments, or concerns from the community that have been brought up that you want to cover now. If you can just roll that into
Sure.
your superintendent's report, that would be great.
Absolutely. Well, welcome everyone. Hopefully you're having a great day. Thanks again to Fran for, just really focusing on, obviously the budget is very important, and that's, primarily what she does, but really spends a lot of time digging into the numbers to make sure that we all understand them, that she has an excellent grasp, seeking, outside consult and input as needed, and really just doing such a yeoman's job. So kudos to Fran and her crew for that. But, as we looked at the board comments, we just had the surveys go out, so I think a lot of people really took that vehicle to share their information. But I would say the information that we received is fairly typical. Comments and questions about the programming, types of resources, times, things of that nature. So we'll ferret those out over the next couple of days and get back with those families. But nothing, that was on fire, so to speak. So like I said, we'll go through those comments. They're decreasing every time we have a meeting. So I think we're finally catching up to answering a number of the questions, which is certainly great. As I mentioned, the surveys, that's really our big rock. A number of surveys went out last week. We had 2 parent surveys, one for our K-2 parents and one for parents with children in grades 3 through 8. We had 2 students surveys. We had one for students in grades 4 and 5, and then grades 6 and 8. And then we also have a or a staff survey that went out as well. The parent survey was translated into Spanish to try to capture as many participants as we could. We actually have a lot of information back already. Here's your friendly plug. The surveys close tomorrow. We'll send them out again just to make sure that everyone has those, but they do close tomorrow. Just as a quick look at some descriptive statistics, not really ready to get into all of them, generally speaking, but just a couple that you might find interesting, and then we'll have a full report on September 29th. But we already have 336 K2 surveys and 301 3 through 8 surveys back, 133 staff surveys, and then 44 student surveys. So after we close the survey, we actually had a conversation today about putting together our teacher groups and our district leadership team to make sure that we can go through those. This will have to be a quick process because there's good information here, and just as I was skimming the contents of the parent surveys and the staff surveys, there are some obvious areas where we can really, probably make some quick movements, whether it is the amount of work, the length of the school day, the amount of screen time. We can make some adjustments there. I think what was really interesting, we do talk a lot about screen time and the amount of work, and we are finding a slight disconnect. That was probably what made my eyebrow go up just a little bit, was that, out of our K2 parents, about 20% of them feel that the amount of work and time is about right. I think where it does get, sideways is the amount of screen time. So we really want to make sure that we're looking at how we're getting our youngest learners into the learning process and keeping them engaged and trying to, keep them focused on the important work. One other question that we asked at the end, and as I mentioned, we'll bring the full results back to the board on the 29th. We'll also send all of the results out to the community so they have those in their hands as well. But the last question that we asked on the parent survey was, if we're able to return to in-person learning in the next couple of months, would you be willing to send your child back to school in a hybrid model? And at the K2 level, 56.8% said yes, and 43.2% said no. And for grades 3 through 8, 53.6% said yes, and 46.4% said no. Again, we have one more day to gather results, but I thought that was interesting. We have some comparison questions from some of the surveys that we've done in the past. What we'll do is we'll bring those when we come back to the board on the 29th with the full results. One of the other pieces that we wanted to talk about in the superintendent's report was enrollment in general. We talked at our last meeting about how the numbers were shaping up. And overall, we are down 123 students from last year. And I would say they're probably spread pretty evenly throughout the grade levels. But what you'll notice is that what we expected, we had that very large 8th grade group graduating, and that was 300.
I'm sorry, Dana, can you repeat that number again?
Yep, we're down 123 students.
Okay.
So we have 2,223 as opposed to 2,356 last year. And remember, we had, that class of 331 8th graders leaving, and, we replaced them with, 270 6th graders. So the numbers at Parker overall are down. But, realistically, Parker is down about 60 students, and then the rest are strewn throughout the district. Two numbers of note that I always try to key in on is that kindergarten and that 8th grade number, because that's how we track those cohorts as they move through the school district. And right now we're sitting at 183 kindergartners and 294 8th graders, compared to last year where we had 203 kindergartners and 331 8th graders. So we've predicted these numbers. I think we always had anticipated landing somewhere around that 180, 185 number at the kindergarten. We know that we pick up students as families move. As kids get older, they want to lock that middle school and then high school transition in. So we know that we pick up students around 4th, 5th, certainly 6th grade as we go. And we expect that to continue. But we wanted to make sure that we brought back the enrollment information, just as we're having the conversations about staffing and preparing for our return to in-person learning this year, but also in the context of a deficit discussion and everything like that. So we'll keep on the enrollment numbers. Now that everyone is back in school, we still have a few students shifting around from other districts, so we'll keep an eye on that. We do have to, just like in the past, we're overflowing students if we have full classrooms, because we want to make sure that we're using all of our staff members as efficiently as possible and not overloading any classrooms. So we're doing our best to even out those rooms and keep great experiences for the kids. So are there any questions on the enrollment information or even just generally on the surveys?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So the, have we factored in kids who are choosing to do something other than what we have offered this year in response to the COVID crisis? For example, of the 123, are some of those families who've said, you know what, I'm gonna take care of school this year. I'm just gonna check out. I mean, or is it like, oh boy, even if we had regular school, we'd be down 123 kids?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's probably some jelly in there. Anecdotal. I would say that we have not coded students that way.
Okay.
Parents don't typically share that information if they're not coming back necessarily. But just anecdotally, there's probably 5 to 10 students in there.
Okay, so this is not like this is something we could have even sort of predicted from the previous year of kindergarten through 7th grade, adding people we anticipate with kindergarten. We're probably going to be down roughly 120 kids ish.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I think we had anticipated the numbers going that direction. We spoke last year that we were we got a little shaky, but we were anticipating that Parker would be under 900 students, and for the first time in a long time, it's sitting at about 851 children. So we knew that was coming, that they would settle. We've got the current 8th grade and the current 7th grade classes at Parker with a little bit of a bump. And as those come through, they're sitting at 294 8th graders and 287 7th graders. So when we have 206 or 76 graders coming up, we'll trim down those classrooms a bit more. And really, we could probably be looking at Parker landing somewhere around 800, 825 kids over the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay, and that's based upon the numbers of kids we have in the grade school that are queuing up?
Yeah, the numbers that are rolling up, but also, just the historical kids that we capture at junior high. We, a lot of families move in to go to Parker because they're going to start at Parker and then they're going to go to HF. And so
Right.
As families make those decisions, we can kind of bolster those Parker numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Do you happen to know what grade and which school experienced the most growth in numbers?
Let's see. One of those is easier than another. So 3rd grade has done the most growing. Technically on paper, preschool has done the most, contracting, but that's also dependent on whether or not we can open up preschool classrooms. So, that's a tricky one to kind of hold on to. But realistically, we're up 8 kids at 3rd grade. We're up 8 at 4th, and we are up 2 in 7th grade. Kind of the ones that stick out: down 37 at 8th, down 27 at 5th grade. If I look at the buildings in particular, we would have to go back through, because we don't have it broken down by grade level by school necessarily to gather that data, but we could do that pretty easily.
I was just curious. It'll be interesting to see what our numbers look like next year, because I know I have experienced this just because I feel like I've lived here forever. But I also just read an article that talked about how Flossmoor is one of the hottest suburbs right now, and home sales are, we have a house that just, actually it sold before it even really went on the market just
That's good.
ago. But I know that there are a lot
Yeah.
of families who have moved in with young children. So they may not be kindergarten ready
Mhm.
this year, but it'll be interesting to see if this trend continues. What does it look like for us? It might also be good, and maybe this is something you can take back to the community engagement committee. I know we've talked a lot in the past about outreach to realtors, how are they talking about 161? I don't know if we paid attention to what our ratings, actually that article that I read cites both the high school and Flossmoor Hills, but said the other schools aren't doing quite so well.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
That's not the message that we want.
That's not even accurate.
But it would be good just to get a sense of what is the messaging that realtors are using. What are they seeing? I mean, they will have their finger on the pulse in a way that we don't, but it would be good to get on the same page with messaging. And then I know a couple of years ago, I think Annabelle, this was maybe you who took on Zillow and our ratings, right? And how we were being, so I don't know where we are with that. And you don't have to answer that now, but it would be good to revisit all of that. And so that is a community engagement activity, but I would love to be more proactive in that space.
Yeah, well, two things on that. So we've stayed pretty aggressive on the great schools information and making sure that that's updated. So I feel pretty good about that. It hasn't been the easiest in some cases to get just some descriptive information change with great schools, which is kind of surprising. But we have sent we've been working on that for months. But as far as the realtors are concerned, here's a shameless plug. On September 26th from 4 to 6, we have a new resident virtual mixer, and that will share a lot of information about the school district and about the high school and the village in general. So Amy, Kent, and I have been working on just updating our two-pager document with some fresh information, looking at the pictures to just make sure that those are accurate. And we'll have those for our parents as well. We'll be prepared to share some great information. And there, maybe I can get a handle on, who's in this crowd. I mean, are there families with 2- and 3-year-olds running around? Are they some empty nesters who've decided to move into the area? So we might, be able to get a good indication on, future students based on at least that small, sample size.
Yeah, I plan on attending that as well. It would be good to see how many folks have moved, but actually elected to not transfer their child this year, because we do have a couple of new neighbors who fit in that category because everybody is remote. They just didn't feel, they were like, I'm just going to let my kids stick with what they know instead of, transferring to another school remotely and not getting, any contact with people. So, so there could be some families who fall into that category as well. It's just more convenient for them to stick with their own school this year if they're able to do that. So
agreed. I could understand that, but that's an easy question for us to ask. So as we're getting set up, I know we have a practice session with the village here in the next few days or so. So as we're having those conversations, we'll talk about whether or not there's an opportunity to poll some of the people and to gather that information.
okay.
Dana, can you tell me why? Go ahead, David.
All right, I've just got a couple of quick things to hit on. One, the number of students that are enrolling, I know has been something that's been forecast because we've talked about it multiple times. And I just really hope that as we're doing a good job of reporting it, we also still kind of keep in mind that these numbers are not surprising because they're reality. They're not just Flossmoor, they're global. People are having less children, and people are actually waiting much longer in life before they have children. So this is something that I think is really easy to track and trend. And I think that as we start to prepare for our budgets and the deficits and all of that, it's wise for us to just take to heart what's really happening. I appreciate, number one, Steve, with that green backdrop, dude, you're killing it.
He was actually back here.
I
usually-
know the blue man.
Usually have a beach scene or like, you know, on the forest.
So, but yeah, so to your point, I do think that there's some small numbers there that we're going to find, but in general, I think we're trending in that direction. So I just wanted to retort with that. But Dana, to your some of your comments in your report about the outside influences on the budget, I guess one of the things that I also want to ask about is some type of report, maybe from our special ed, that allows us to look at some of those outside influences, maybe from the special ed programs, maybe looking at the students that we have that are in the programs, whether or not some of the students that are in some of the outsourced programs, just looking at that a lot more holistically.
Yep.
And also even the rise to see if there's some students who've actually done better and might want to come home. Then my other large overview kind of a thing is when you talk about coming back or the possibility of coming back, maybe later on you can talk about more, but can we come back in January? I know that there was some stipulations, some requirements and guidelines we had to conform with, which stopped us from opening initially. I'd like to hear more about that. And then my last point is with testing. Are we going to talk about testing at all on this agenda?
No.
Okay.
But this is all very timely. So our MAP assessment window is getting off the ground. So is AIMSweb. We will have data to start sharing with the board starting at our next meeting. So yes. So we're not talking about it tonight, but we'll just have to start having those conversations on the 29th, even though the buildings will already be using the data before then. We'll want to bring that to the board for a full discussion.
So yeah, I know we're not talking about testing because it's going on, but I do want to just give a big shout out to all of the teachers today who had to deal with technical issues and, trying to troubleshoot. I've witnessed teachers trying to troubleshoot with one family at a time. And, this was not easy. And, a lot of people, there are 1,000 questions I'm sure that families could ask about, our level of preparedness, but this is not something that we've ever done before. So I really appreciate and applaud the efforts of both the teachers today in the role that they played to get the students finally up and running, but also, I am very much aware of the time it took for parents to actually sit right there too and do all the troubleshooting and figuring it out. And I mean, it was not easy for anybody at all today. So I just want to acknowledge that, some ice cream after dinner or something.
That's it. That's right.
Because I think everybody deserves it after, this morning and afternoon of MAP testing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I had a question, and David took the words out of my mouth a little bit. So I kind of just wanted to have an update on the item that basically took us off the docket for removing us from starting, which was the N95 requirement. Do we have an update on that? Where are we at in regards to fit testing?
We're getting closer. I know we started sending people last week for the fit testing. So Kathy Kanawa is organizing that with an outside organization. So realistically, I mean, we'll probably have enough people fit tested here in the next week or so. I'll verify with Kathy Kanawa and then send an update.
Thank you.
Of course.
Oh, and I know we've talked about this at every meeting about meeting in person, and I know the issue that we have is that we're not allowed to have over 50 people, and that would limit the amount of participation that we have with our parents. And I'm aware that a lot of local districts, including I know Prairie State College does a live meeting and they record, and they also have an in-person meeting too. So have we been investigating on all of our options and how we can go about doing that?
No. We can.
I think
Right.
it's worth it, because if this is going to be for the interim of the, for the foreseeable future, I think it should be for the foreseeable future anyway. We should always have that option for parents to join virtually even when we do return in person, whenever normalcy ever comes back. So
Absolutely. And I think that therein lies the challenge, because it is cameras and it's microphones, and we'll have to be a little bit more consistent leaning into those microphones sitting at the table as compared to how we currently are. But I think those are some of the, frankly, purchases and installations that we have to do. We have to install additional AV equipment to do this.
Okay.
Well, and I think we also we have to think about other type of safety measures that we have to have in place, right? Because I know HF on a limited basis today started allowing some students back into the building if their class requires them to use certain equipment or whatever. So, there's a self-reporting that's done, there are temp checks that are done, there's, sanitary. So we have to make sure we've decided on what type of checks we will require before we do all of that. And the mics, he was actually, he has a radio program. So I'm like, so how close are you all sitting in the radio station to be able to do this? And so where is the sanitation happening? And, so that has to happen, that just got more work to do, right?
Michelle, but don't we already kind of have a lot of that stuff already set up, because we actually had it set up to go hybrid anyway. I know that the temperature checking is in place. I know we've got the sanitation. So don't we actually have all this stuff already on hand?
Yes, but you won't be able to hear and see, right? Because essentially we'll have, I'm sure there's a formal audio name for this, but it's going to be secondary sound, because we don't have a way to send sound directly out to people. And so you're going to get sound from David's voice, and then sound from David's voice into the microphone, and then sound from David's voice into a camera or a computer. So we're going to end up filtering that 3 times.
Called echoing.
There you go. Thank you. So I think those are some of the concerns. We can do it. I would say the quality would not be great, and I think that may cause as many issues as not doing it.
If I may, what we'd have to do is everybody would have to wear headphones and not have any outside noises, because that would get picked up. And it really comes down to the question: is there a large enough benefit to meeting in place where we're not able to meet as we are now and have been for the last number of months, to really offset the having to get used to it, and all the little hiccups and things we trip over. So whenever we make a transition, there's a transition time. And there's a shift in terms of people drop out or come in, or so that's a kind of the guiding question.
Yeah. Christina, what are we missing that we're going to gain? Because I'm trying to think about this as a value add. So what will we gain if we press the button and get back to in-person board meetings?
I think for me, it's the whole the process of coming together and being able to be in a room with people and to read, not just through a screen. For myself, it's technological just misinterpretation of people, and I don't like right now. It's unfortunately what we have to do. So I think you miss a lot of reading somebody's body language, and just overall things can get easily misconstrued, and I just don't like making those assumptions through a screen. But it's even not just for the interim. I think it's something that we should have been doing, you know, even before this, because Steve, Prairie State College does not have headsets. So, I mean, I can look into that. I can get you contact information. They literally speak into the mic and you can literally watch on YouTube live. So I just, there's a way, there's a will, and I think we should meet parents technologically where they're at. So in a year from now, they can sit from their couch and watch our board meeting live, just like they should be able to. So
I think that sounds great. And, you know, certainly if we can do that in the future where it's not going to be a distraction, you know, the joke with my green screen is, which I use for school. I don't have a beach scene up right now, but I usually do, because it's, you know, it's not on our agenda, but I agree with you. I mean, certainly I think there's a water cooler effect when we're all in one room, which is why we're supposed to be all in one room. But, you know, at the same time, you know, I would say if we can really nail that and roll it out, great. But let's go with a solid plan, and even test it out in some committees if that works. That might be the best place to try that out.
Yep. We've started that conversation, so it's not foreign.
Dana, to Chris's point, I'm 100% with her that we should be meeting in person. And you know, now if there are board members who actually don't feel comfortable, then that's a different issue. But to the fact that if we can, then we should, because also if we're also talking about trying to open, then if we're going to talk about other people meeting in person, why can't we meet in person? So I also think that there's a lot to be said for that.
I think once we determine that it's smart for people to meet in person, you have my full support. I think the challenge that we're having now is that we're not bringing groups of teachers together. We're not bringing groups of parents together. We can absolutely look at how we want to do these meetings, and we can run with those. But we have to be careful on the connection between talking about coming back and actually making the moves to come back. And I don't know that meeting in person necessarily predicts the other. So what we can do is gather information. We'll talk to Leonard. I've already talked to him about how we want to, you know, stream the board meetings. I think everyone's right. I don't think we can go back. I think I've loved how many new people we've been able to engage in our board meetings and information that we can share. And I just feel like the information that we're putting out, because so many people are engaged with the work that's happening at the board meetings, they're seeing how you guys are interacting and working through the issues. There's really a lot of context that gets shared. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. So I certainly don't want to go back. We'll have to keep a way to broadcast the meetings and make sure that we have even more access and transparency in the future. So I'll bring an update back on the 29th, if that's okay.
And my last point about transparency is this, and I know that I might be alone on this point, but I still want to state it, that because we're doing this virtually, I often find myself trying to really tamper, condense, simplify, think and rethink what I'm saying exactly. As opposed to, as Christina was saying, when you use your own body language, you tend to let information flow more freely. And so I feel somewhat suffocated and by the whole Zoom concept. And I've really experienced enough of it where it's become extremely stressful to have to sit in front of the camera at all times and be on camera alert.
Understandable.
The one thing I would add is just, I'm okay with looking into things and thinking through what the future holds for us for board meetings. I agree that whenever we are able to get back in person, we should stream. I just don't want a lot of time to be spent on this when I don't want your team to get stretched on this, because I think there are some pieces that are still needing to be worked out in regards to instruction online for students.
Sure.
And my hope is that this isn't a hard pivot to focus. I would not endorse focusing on figuring the board meeting piece out just yet, while we're still trying to get things settled for our students in the situation that they're currently in. That's the only thing that I would say.
No, that's understandable. That's understandable. Okay, well, why don't we see what we can pull together for the 29th, and we'll have that conversation. And then we can see how we want to go from there.
Okay.
Awesome.
I mean, I think obviously COVID has presented a lot of opportunities are being presented, I think, because of how we are doing things right now. And so I think there are opportunities to think very thoughtfully and carefully about how do we do some of the things and ideas that are coming up versus those things that we absolutely just must do because it's just for the betterment of everybody involved. So some things require a knee-jerk reaction or a reactive response. Some require a proactive. So, and I think the viewing live, I think, I don't think anyone's ever been opposed to that. I mean, I can remember when the day was when we actually started taping this session. So I don't think anybody's opposed to it. But I think I agree with you, Carolyn, that, if it takes too much time away, there are more crucial pieces like all the technical challenges today with MAP, for example, that we had to go through. But yes, I'm sure we all are anxious to get back and sit close to our board colleagues.
Right, absolutely.
I didn't know David missed us so much.
There's evidence.
I miss the camaraderie. I miss the snacks, the water. I miss
snacks.
Yeah.
No, that means we're meeting too long when we have to have snacks.
Right.
Yeah, that's what you don't have.
That's what we need to talk about.
I hope you don't hear my want for furthering this discussion into my disregard for the time that needs to be spent on e-learning and the potential to move back to a hybrid model of the eventual plan. That's
Okay.
not what I mean. I just want to be responsible in our duties as a Board of Education and meeting in person as we were elected to do such, and also our transparency in transmitting that information to the public. So
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Your point is not invalid. It is on point. It's, I totally agree with you. But it would be, again, it's the water cooler. It's I wish we could do that now, and we'll see what we can do when we can.
Absolutely. But that is the end of my update.
I'm with Dave. The green screen is throwing me off, Steve. Scott, can you get us some green screens?
Yeah, that's right. Now we need exciting backgrounds for everybody.
I mean, I feel like you are going to start doing the weather in the background very soon, Steve.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this is just my area.
That's okay. Just whatever works for you. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments regarding the superintendent's report or the enrollment update, I will keep going. We have a number of action items to approve before we can get to our discussion items. So let's see, the bills for the month of September were received by Mr. Nelson. May I have a motion to, oh, that's you. You can do the rest.
So I have reviewed the month's bills. I spoke with Fran about the expenses. We talked about specific line items that can be considered for savings in the future as part of the bill review process. I move that we approve the bills in the amount of $1,166,395.78 for the month of September.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Nelson?
Was that Nelson? Yes.
Yes. Blackman?
Yes.
Leetstra?
yes.
Lanier?
Yeah.
Briggs?
Yes.
Paredes?
Yes.
Leedstra.
No, you got me twice.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. May I have a motion, please, to approve payroll for the month of August in the amount of $943,613.38.
So moved.
Sorry. Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. May I have a motion to approve the Board of Education minutes from July 6th and July 13th, and the exec session minutes from July 6th and July 20th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Lanier,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman, Blackman, Paredes,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. May I have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 annual budget as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Leedstra,
Oh, yep. Sorry, I was slow. Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. May I have a motion to approve the memo of understanding regarding tenured teacher evaluations for the 2020-2021 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Griggs,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. We have a motion to approve the resolution giving notice of withdrawal from the ISIC Property Casualty Cooperative.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Blackman, Blackman,
You're on mute.
Were you waiting for me? I got kicked out. Okay, yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. We have a motion to approve the donation to Flossmoor Hills in the amount of $500.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
This is awesome. I mean, can we meet this person? Was it anonymous? I saw, but that's wonderful.
Certainly a lot of generosity, and we're very thankful, and we know that the school will put it to great use for kids.
Yeah, my question is along the same lines. How do we show recognition and appreciation for this wonderful donation?
Just like this. We will thank them personally. We'll reach out to the donor, and I will express my just authentic gratitude that they would give their resources to support our kids. It's really awesome. So I will make sure that we do that.
Or maybe if something like big is bought or purchased, we can hang it like,
Yeah.
Near it, outside of it, something of that nature. Like in the STEAM lab, there's a little plaque next to the in Serena Hills. So.
Sure. Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Leedstra,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. We have a motion to approve the revised 2020-2021 calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Briggs,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Leestra,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. May I have a motion to approve the print management contract with Proven IT?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Paredes,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Leestra,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion has passed. We have moved through all of our action items.
Awesome.
Now let's see if we move through our discussion items at the same speed. Probably
Therein lies
not.
the challenge. Nope.
That's
The
all right.
first two certainly. The first two certainly.
First item, building crisis plans.
Yeah, so we present our building crisis plans to the Board of Education every year. They are not made public because they deal with a range of issues, you know, going from, our tornado drills and what we would have to do in the event of an evacuation to, more security focused decisions that we have to make school by school. So we don't make those plans public, but they do exist. They are very thorough. Haley Marty is our crisis plan monitor. She helps the principals with all those and make sure that everything is up to date. But again, this is just sharing them with the Board of Education as a reminder that we have them in place, that we still have people working in our schools, our protocols for checking IDs and making sure that we're closely monitoring all the traffic in and out and around our schools is still going on, even though we have obviously temperature checks and masks and all those things. If anything, it is even more important that we're vigilant on all of our plans right now. So the best crisis plan is one that you never use, but you understand what needs to be done in case it ever comes to fruition, and that's what we have here. And we continue to work on these throughout the year. Once obviously all of our students are back, we will practice all the necessary drills, including our lockdown drills and things of that nature.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
My question is maybe a wee bit of a parking lot to the plan, but where are we with some of that security issue that we were looking at for Heather Hill?
What do you mean?
I know that we were discussing the construction aspect of it and what it would take and how much it would take, et cetera, to securing that the area at the entrance so that we wouldn't have to have an emergency plan in case someone entered the building.
Well, we'll have to have it no matter what. There's two issues. One, all the issues that we talked about before we addressed. We had the cameras, we had the key fobs, all of those pieces. So we addressed those issues. Where the work stopped was the $1.5+ million back of the envelope price tag on making any more aggressive changes. And so that was put on ice.
From what I recall, that was put on ice because we were going to do the adequacy assessments for all of the buildings across the board. So if you remember that, David.
Yeah, then we can make those decisions. But we did add, we added another outdoor camera. Actually, we may have added 2 there. So now we have one of the pieces that we talked about was ability, because there are no 0 windows in that office. We wanted to add another camera outside. So not only could our administrative assistants see what's happening in the hallways and in the foyer, but also outside as well, in case a student was dropped off late or if there's a bus issue or something along those lines. So we took care of all those things months ago.
I know one of the things with the camera was that I think the system was either outdated or old, or the cameras weren't, giving clear and proper displays. Has that been taken care of also?
Yes. Yep. And I don't know that it was the age necessarily, although that certainly is an issue with a number of our cameras, especially just as new technology comes up and we can upgrade those cameras to take less bandwidth, et cetera. It just makes everything better on our network. But one of our main issues was getting access for people to see what's coming out of the cameras that we have. And so we added a monitor for those administrative assistants to be able to see the outside piece.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, if not, we will go on to July and August financial reports.
Yeah, both July and August, they are in the old-fashioned method because the new 5Cast Plus isn't up until audit is complete, and then we will put in the new numbers into 5Cast, and you'll get the pictures of the graphs again. But we're pretty much, like I said, exactly where we thought we would be on the expense side and on the revenue side. I'm pretty okay with where the revenues, where the property taxes are coming in at this point, so we'll just keep watching.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right, remote learning staffing changes.
Absolutely. So this conversation could, float into a few different areas, and that's okay. I think just as we're talking about the impacts of our decisions, this is a good example of how all of our pieces are intertwined. So close a few of these. Don't need the crisis plan anymore, but we have to talk about any staffing changes that we would want to make, and with regard to remote learning, and specifically with regard to not having students that need to work with certain adults. And so while we are in a remote setting, we are mismatched and we are overstaffed. And this is a very sensitive topic because jobs are being discussed, and we want to make sure that we give that it's due. The pieces that all come together, which make this a very difficult topic, frankly, is the timeline. Now, when I say that there are a number of positions that we're looking at, again, we're trying to find anything as far away from children, as far away from parents, and as far away from teachers as possible. We don't, certainly now is not the time to remove any supports that we have in place for our district and our community. But, for example, when we look at, we have bus drivers, we have 2 buses in our district, and we don't have kids to bus. And so we can try to be creative and find opportunities for people to deliver items to homes or take items in between buildings. But at the end of the day, at some point you run out of projects and opportunities for those people to, to work in their area of expertise, frankly. Now, I say all of this, again, in the context of what Christina brought up and David as well. We have to think about, at some point, how our return to work decisions will be made. Realistically, we need 3 weeks from the time that we decide that we're going to go back to school to actually get back. We have to survey our parents to find out if they're going to send their children back. We have to survey our teachers to find out if they're going to come back. I firmly expect that we will have some people that decide not to, or because of medical reasons are unable to do so. And so there's a hiring process that we'll have to implement then as well. Obviously, all of the schedules need to be redone because the same kids who were like, yeah, I'll come back for hybrid may not want to do that, or vice versa. So we'll have to recreate all of the class lists, recreate all of the schedules and all that piece. So that gives you a little bit of context in the time. Now, as we're looking to do any reductions in force where this gets very lengthy, as obviously we're talking about it now, so we would not take any action. If you did want to take action at the end of September, that means the specific action would take place at the end of October. So if the board voted on September 29th, yes, we would like to look at reducing some of these positions. We would be able to take action in October, and then we could implement in November. So you see how far out we are. So now we're talking about implementing in November. As I put here, those monthly savings could approach $40,000 per month on the conservative side. On paper, they're a little bit higher than that, but just the way that everything shakes out with hiring, we want to make sure that we're giving conservative estimates on anything that we would save. Again, this is not this is not a decision about, we're going into this needing to save money, but we have a mismatch between our needs on the staffing side and the amount of resources that we have to staff those positions. So again, as we may say we do move forward, we decide to reduce these positions and we decide to come back in person, we will have to rehire those people as well. So, this is a reduction in force. And so people who are reduced have recall rights potentially to those positions, and hopefully they would be available. But if they move on to other opportunities, we would have to find and retrain all of those positions. Okay. So, just to be, perfectly transparent, because I know as we have this conversation, people are going to be wondering. We have a number of positions that are on this list that we're looking at that we want to share with you without naming any names, because we will certainly not do that. The positions that we want to talk to you about reducing would be custodians. We have evening custodians. We do not have any afternoon or evening activities in the buildings. We have a number of paraprofessionals who had supervisory duties for programs, obviously where you need the kids in person. Our district bus drivers, who primarily transport our pre-K students, aren't transporting. We have a number of school support aides that, if you remember, somewhere about maybe 16 to 18 months ago, we talked about the school support aides and how valuable they were just as another set of hands. And we can certainly think of tons of examples of how they work with kids. I think that's where the benefit of that position is. And I think that's what's challenging now is there aren't the kids to support, which is a primary focus of those school support aides. And then finally, our media paraprofessional positions. Now, as we're saying positions, that doesn't mean people, because everything is done by seniority. So just because a person is in, for example, a school support aide position, as we decide to make changes or not, any adjustments are done by seniority. So it's not the person who's in these positions necessarily who would be reduced. And there is a domino effect, unfortunately, that goes along with that. So this is really a conversation about the board's appetite for us to really dig into these reductions to try to find and just make sure that we are as far away from students, teachers, and parents as possible. But on the other end, really, if we're going to move down this path, we're essentially deciding that we're not going to come back to school until January. So again, there are no decisions to be made tonight. Probably generate a lot of questions and a lot more discussion when we come back on Tuesday, September 29th, to potentially take action on this or just discuss it again. But that's where we are on the staffing process. What questions do you have?
So assuming we are coming back in January, let's assume for the next 90 seconds that, a vaccine or some other clear thing gives us, makes us all comfortable starting in January without having to worry about hybrid and other complications. And given that, even if we decide at our next board meeting to do this, it sounds like we're only actually saving a month or two on a handful of personnel.
Yes.
Okay. Do you still recommend that we do that?
I'd want to go back through, and this becomes balancing the truly painful with the truly painful. I mean, no, I cringe when I think about the families who will be affected and the staff members affected. But I also know that we're talking about district deficits, and as we make these one-off decisions, they kind of add up, and we're having a hard time anticipating finding work for these people to do over the next 12 weeks.
Have you, and I appreciate if you have to answer this in a closed session as opposed to right now, but have you approached the FEA about any creative solutions to that problem? So assuming the board says, yes, do the reduction in force, even though we may be recalling them in January. I assume at some point you'll speak to the FEA about that in order to make this go as smoothly as possible.
Oh, absolutely. We already have.
Okay.
We already have, because I certainly think there could be other ideas out there. We're talking about the bus drivers, but on the other side of that, piece of paper, we've also talked about, well, maybe we could do a bookmobile, or, we're trying to figure out different ways to add value in the community and to the district while using the staff that we have. So all of those conversations are certainly on the table. These are spent dollars for me. So if we can, put students in great situations or provide some additional teacher support, we'll certainly do that. I think we've just, in some of those cases, we have run out of ideas.
I have a quick question. Do we have, have we saved, or rather have we, is there money like with busing that we have not spent, that this is just a matter of reality where, we saved money because we didn't hire Paul this year, but, so now, we've got Peter, what I mean? Is in the end, are we saving like $50 on busing, in the contract busing to pick kids up at their homes, but it's costing us $50 with our in-house busing. So, what I mean? Like in a, on the spreadsheet, does it come out to zero? Does it come out to, or thousands of dollars that we really should think of, trying to save for the district since we have an opportunity? Or is this a, and given we have we do have a deficit, is this something where we're just flat out now going to lose this money?
Well, if you look at it in the context of some of the other decisions the board has made, they seem like one-offs, right? But they really kind of add up. So we just, made the printer management contract tonight, and kudos to Fran for really grinding that one into a pulp and getting a good deal. But as you start adding up, 40,000 here, 50,000 here, you can really, now that's a teacher, right? Or that's a specialist that we can add back into a different program, or maybe it's a social worker or things of that nature. So, it's not a saving money for saving money's sake as much as it is, let's consistently look at how we're allocating our resources. And if we have to make some tough decisions so that we can use the resources elsewhere in the district, for kids and teachers and parents, let's do that.
Well, one of my other concerns with this was, we started and we hired people, in education, there's kind of a window that everybody, and a schedule that everyone tries to keep to. And I know it's frustrating for the district or school when, a teacher or somebody in a key position, it takes another job in August, a week before school starts. And, at some point, if we would let position A go and person A went with them, are we not kind of doing the same thing where we're like, look, we've got a job for you for this year, this contract period. And if we say, okay, well, it didn't work out, in a way, aren't we kind of doing what teachers or other people would do if they're saying, well, I changed my mind. I'm gonna leave now that school started, because it might be, and I don't know, what positions are easily filled somewhere else. Like if someone left here or they stumble into a job a district away because they do need them there, or is this a situation where we've convinced someone to work in our district? They've said yes when we needed them, but then a few weeks later we said, well, we didn't really need you, and we're kind of backing out of the relationship. You understand my question?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. I think that's where the sensitivity comes in, Steve, because these are challenging decisions, but like everything else, that's why we have a protocol. So if a teacher has another opportunity, I can think of two different situations. One person choosing to stay home with her family, and
Sure.
another person choosing to take a job and across the state. One of those, or I remember a situation last year, and this is probably more closely aligned to the point I'm trying to make. where a person gave us notice, and then we had time to find a replacement, and then we moved on. And so the protections in this process for the staff member would be the 30 days, right? So, and it's 30 days from the time that the board makes the decision. So if we talked about it tonight in a board and we came together on September 29th and decided that either all of this or a part of a reduction was needed, and we made that decision, nothing happens for another 30 days. And so there is some protection for the staff member where they're still paid. They have an opportunity. They have benefits, but they also have an opportunity to find another job, and they go from there. But also, it gives us time to see what shakes out in the world. I mean, we may have an idea that January is on the on the docket, or it may not. We may say, okay, it's going to be spring break. At the very least, though, we're making decisions, 4 to 6 months out in advance that we have to be cognizant of.
Dana, I'm sorry, Chris. Dana, I want to say that, number one, I applaud the staff and the administration for bringing this to the board, because we actually asked you guys to look at all aspects of what's going on with the budget. So yes, that part, again, I want to thank you guys for doing that. I'm sure that in that process, like you said, it was not easy. It was tough. But you guys try to do this to the best of your ability. So again, I really applaud you for that.
Thank you.
And when the board made the decision to go remote, we made the decision knowing that there were going to be ripples and there were going to be dominoes that were going to fall. This is one of those obvious dominoes to me that you're going to have when you're not having children in place. So with that, I receive what you're saying, and I get it. So I just want to make sure you knew that I do appreciate the thought and the process, and I see the necessity for looking at this and saving money where we can save money.
Thank you.
Christina?
Okay, so like David said, thank you for you and the team on being as financially responsible as you can be and looking ahead. But I think for us to even broach this topic of doing this right now, when we really have no idea what the next 60 days or less could hold, I would not be in favor of doing anything of this sort right now during this. We just don't know. And I would surely hope that we would have some kind of a hybrid option into play well before January. I'm just thinking of all of the working parents that are struggling right now, and all of the that have reached out to me because they are struggling, and then they don't know how they're going to continue, and they don't know who's going to watch their kid even tomorrow because they have to go to work. Mm-hmm. So for us to even, yes, every penny counts, especially during a pandemic year that we really have no idea where funding is coming from and things. So I applaud everybody, but it's very, very egregious for anybody for us to, I think, act in that way when truthfully, I mean, we could have a solid 4 weeks of school left, and now we have to rehire, and it just, I'm not comfortable with making that decision right now. I don't think we should be doing that at all.
I think it's a worthy question. I mean, as a fiduciary responsibility, this is, I mean, we can't, it's not something I think we should ignore, but, and again, you're right. It's a very, very tough decision, which is, part of the job, and it's part of, who we are as the board is, and we can, as a board, say, yeah, I've thought about it and no, or I thought about it and let's explore it further. And again, I have my own, personal feelings, but the reality is it's a question that we have to always explore. And it's a part of the role we have. But
yeah.
Feel.
Yeah, and I think the challenge becomes, well, the challenge is there are only so many closets to clean out. And truly, for some of these positions, they are solely dependent on students physically being there every day. And again, we can go either way. I think everyone has said it perfectly. This is a tough decision, and I'm so glad we don't have to make it tonight. I'm glad we're just talking about it. And those are a lot of the things that come into play. It's certainly emotional. It's going to affect our most important, part of our district, along with the students, which is our teachers. We don't function without our teachers, without our classified staff, without our custodians, all those different people. And I think that's what makes it, challenging to us. But it's good that we're having the conversation at the very least, so the board understands what we're not doing by also not making a decision as well.
Dana, can you, a couple things. Can you tell me or tell us about how many people those 5 groups represents?
20.
20. And then my other kind of question is it possible that the results of the survey would potentially direct us to a need that we've overlooked for maybe not for all 20, but maybe 1 or 2?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
even if it's one-on-one work with a small group of students, through Zoom. I'm wondering if a little more information about our needs, the survey might reveal a little more information about our needs.
Yeah, I think so. Especially as, really kind of digging into those parent surveys, but also the teacher surveys as well. It's also important to note we have another layer of support after all of these people. So these positions represent the people that we really are struggling with because of the lack of students.
Okay.
There's another list of people that we haven't, or positions that we haven't brought that are just close enough that it's certainly not worth looking at making any changes there because of, how it could affect, the overall district and the systems that they work in, even though the levels of responsibility without the students might not be the same. We can figure out different, results or different opportunities for those people to work. So,
okay.
but yeah, it's about 20 positions overall.
So if I'm hearing you right, Dina, I think you're telling us that we have 20 people who have nothing to do either right now or will have nothing to do very soon.
Without being very creative, yes.
Okay. And so we have an obligation to the taxpayers not to pay people to do nothing. To Christina's point, is there any chance of opening schools even partially the second quarter at this point?
You said that was for Christina or me?
It's for you, but I'm addressing her,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I don't know. Christina's more hopeful than I am. I guess I've given up hope that we're going to open schools the second quarter, but do you think there's any chance we're going to open up schools even partially the second quarter?
I mean, I could see, Michelle, shared that HF is bringing in their automotive kids and, some of their welding students. I could see a couple of one-offs, maybe for maybe some special programs. Had a meeting with Dr. Mitchell in Homewood last week, and we talked about just different ways to connect with kids and maybe, bringing some of those kids in who aren't, really engaging with remote learning at home and just sitting them in a room with a parapro where they can work. So I think there are, some ways that we can, recapture some of those pieces, but I really have not talked to anyone who's planning on making a wholesale shift. Certainly not going into the second quarter. Most people are looking at January as far as making that change.
And remind me when the second quarter normally starts?
October 16th.
Okay. So you would have to decide.
We'd have to decide next week.
Yeah. So it's not happening. If we rift these 20 people right now, would you need them back to do some of those one-off things that you just described? Or would you be able to staff those one-off things with the other staff you were just talking about?
Mm-hmm. Actually, Fran kind of went through one of the survey questions, if you notice, asked about the lunch process and if we were able to get some evening hours to hand out lunches. And really, I think that's going to be a good opportunity for our families. A lot of positive feedback on that question. So there, we do have some one-offs where we think we can get these people some hours and get them some work. We just don't need the full schedule that they currently have.
Okay. And then,
And that wouldn't impact unemployment or anything along those lines.
well, that was, yeah, my next question was going to be unemployment and benefits, right? So if we riff somebody as soon as we could, what is that going to do to their benefits between that date in January?
I would have to tag on to Eric or Fran if they're able to unmute on that, or we can bring that answer back on the benefits
My understanding is that the benefits would end on the same day.
of termination, right?
Yep.
Or reduction.
Reduction.
Okay, and so do we have any flexibility, and maybe you have to talk to the FAA about this. I assume, and maybe I'm assuming too much, maybe we're talking about staff that doesn't care if they're all part-time, but I assume that they would prefer to keep benefits even if they weren't getting paid. Is that going to be generally true for most of these employees?
I'm not sure.
We don't know. Okay.
I'm sure that would be the case for some of them. I'm not sure for all. So this class of employees, depending on who we're talking about, some of them regularly take the benefits, some of them do not. The different classifications are a little bit different.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of not a straightforward answer.
Yeah.
Understood. Well, so while I strongly sympathize with Christina, I mean, I still haven't changed my opinion that schools should just be open. And I'd like them to be open as soon as possible.
Mhm.
But, you know, if in your judgment, it's not very realistic that they're going to be open, we are obligated to not spend money to pay people not to do anything. That said, I think we're equally obligated to take as flexible approach as we can to a riff in the situation. And, you know, as much work as this is going to create for Fran and Eric, I think that means discussing, you know, what is this going to have, what effect is this going to have on benefits? What do you, the employee, want to do? Some, you know, there'll be some who'll be happy to say, look, I'll just take unemployment and we'll see you, you know, in a few months. And then there's others that won't. So we have, you know, I think all that factors into, are we really saving $40,000 a month? But you know, we can't say no to $40,000 a month in savings. Or
Yeah. So the conservative piece is the 40. It's actually closer to 50. I'm just trying to factor in unemployment and some things of that nature.
right. Well, so I guess that's where I'm personally at is, you know, unfortunately we can't retain people who aren't working. And I think we're obligated to do a reduction in force. And, you know, while I'm personally feeling pretty good that we'll be back in school in January, based on my own, you know, personal opinions, there's a risk that it goes beyond that, and that needs to be factored in too. So I think it needs to be brought to the board for a decision at our next meeting. And I think that, you know, to the extent the FEA and you can work together to come with a creative solution, I think that needs to happen pretty fast.
Yep.
I think it's hard for me to make a decision or feel like I have enough information. And I agree with a lot of the comments. I would like to see all efforts exhausted in terms of other potential uses for staff before we decide that we're going to make cuts. So I think part of, at the same time, we want to vote on it, we also have to feel like we have enough information to make, you know, a good decision about it. And I think between the information you will collect from the surveys, I also think the information that you all will collect from the testing data might reveal opportunities to do more one-offs. And, you know, maybe there are more students than we actually think might need to come into the building on a more frequent basis to get more one-on-one. We just don't know the answer to that. And so I would hate to make that decision too soon. I mean, I have a profound appreciation for, you know, the fiduciary responsibility that we have, but I also want to make sure we have exhausted efforts and we have as much information about what our students and teachers' needs are before we do that. So to your point, Carolyn, maybe it's not 20 people, maybe it's half of that, or maybe it's 5. I don't know what the magic number would be, but I do think you will have this conversation might sound a little bit different once you and your team have more information about what is going to be needed. I have to imagine that there are students and families that would benefit from one-on-one who will need it. I think about our kindergartners, and the challenge of teaching, 5-year-olds to read and do their number. I mean, so, I don't know what the testing is going to reveal. I just like for us to be able to make informed decisions.
Absolutely. And I think, that's why we truly wanted to have a conversation tonight, knowing that this wasn't an official discussion meeting, but the next one could be long. So we just wanted to get this one on the table for the board tonight. We can absolutely go back, continue to work with the FEA. We'll have our data. We'll have our student data rolling in. We already have some. We'll have more map data rolling in. We'll have the survey data as well. So between really those two different pieces, conversations with the district leadership team and the grade level, teachers, as we're looking at, making changes to class time and those pieces, they may have other ideas on how we can reallocate some of these people. Again, to reiterate, it's saving money for saving money's sake, not because we're about to go off of a cliff. It's just a responsible decision. And if there are ways that we could use these people to either add value in other places, helping students, teachers, parents, we'll absolutely do that if we can do it meaningfully. So I have a lot of good information here and questions that I've captured. So I can go back, work with cabinet, work with our building leaders, and bring everything back on the 29th if you guys are okay with that. And then we could have a conversation then. That'd be okay.
Dana,
And
I have one more
think if
question.
you feel like
too.
you don't have all the pieces that you need, then I would be fine if you needed to call a meeting sooner, an emergency meeting between the September 29th meeting and the next meeting to make that decision. So
Absolutely.
I don't feel like the 29th, like we wouldn't be willing to, adjust our schedule so that we could do another meeting.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Christina.
Thank you.
So I hate to beat the dead horse in the room, and maybe even the elephant in the room, in the virtual room, but can you please explain and elaborate on, aside from N95 mask fit test, what is stopping us from opening?
Having teachers to teach, having kids in the school, right? So if the pink elephant, let's continue the sayings, throw the skunk on the table. The real issue is that we can want to go back. We have to have people to go back.
Sure.
And nothing has improved. And as a matter of fact, things have worsened. And that's objectively speaking. So without anecdotally looking at how people are feeling, the data is showing that infections are not improving, especially around the age bands that make up your teaching staff. And I think that's going to be problematic as we're trying to bring people back. Also, the underlying medical issues that either some of our staff members have or their families have that will prevent them from coming back in person will be a hurdle, absolutely. I think we're lower than where we were previously when we surveyed and we put everything together. We did not have 53% of the parents, wanting to come back in a hybrid, model. So depending on how that shakes out with the different grade levels, we might be up or we might be down. I think it's going to be a matter, we can absolutely social distance those kids in the building. It's going to be a matter of are people willing to come back?
What was the additional 6 feet rule that was added? I can't remember, but it was something about 6 feet.
It wasn't optional. It was 2 things. One, it was mandatory 6 feet, but also it's the 15 minutes within 6 feet in relation to someone else that could impact quarantining and things of that nature. So you have, students have a running clock. So for example, in the past, if another student, had to quarantine because of COVID. Depending on contact tracing in the classroom and in the building, we could figure that out. Essentially, under the new guidelines, anyone who spends 15 minutes total over 2 days, again, that's total over 2 days, will have to quarantine as well.
So is the 15-minute rule, does it only apply to kids who are in quarantine rooms, or does it apply to all children back in the building?
It's all children back, and the only time you have to use it is if there is a suspected case and you're determining who has to stay home.
Okay, so if there's a suspected case, then kids in that room would essentially every 15 minutes have to move?
Well, remember, it's 15 minutes over 2 days. So in 48 hours, if I spend 15 minutes with someone, within those 6 feet, that's problematic. But realistically, like within a classroom, even if we have 10 kids in the room, or if a teacher brings up a small group of students, there's still going to be socially distanced around the kidney table and all those pieces. So we can still manage, the social distancing piece. We'll get the updated information on the N95 masks. Remember, in order to do a fit test on an N95 mask, the first thing you need is multiple, because you have to have multiple sizes, because a person should be able to choose which side they're going to wear. You have to have a place that will absolutely do the testing, and we do have that. Thanks to Kathy Kanawa for getting that set up. And we'll have an update to the board, certainly in your board updates this week.
Now, according to the IDPH guidelines that I have in front of me, it said that nurses and custodial staff, or anybody that may be in contact, not even may be in contact, that would be in contact with an infected person, were the only personnel that would need an N95 mask, correct?
That's correct, but you're talking at least 3 people per building.
Sure.
Because you have to have your nurse, you'll have to have a custodian, and you'll have to have a person watching that room.
So, Dana, can you give me a sense for, as the incoming information has changed and my own views have evolved slightly on this, it seems to me that our biggest hurdle to coming back, please tell me if I'm wrong, you know better than I, but is not so much parents as it is teachers, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if we as a board said, no, we're opening school, it doesn't really matter if half the parents don't want to.
Yeah.
But,
oh, you're right.
It really, though, I don't know where we are, just sort of big picture number wise, on teachers who have, good legitimate reasons to not be in school. Is that half of our teachers? I don't have a good sense for where they're, I don't.
No, fraction. It's a fraction.
Their age breakdown. I don't have a good sense for when, how many teachers really just can't come back and do in-person teaching. I think that anything hybrid related, as much as I want to reopen doors as soon as we can, hybrid seem to be an administrative nightmare. Look, numbers wise, cases in Illinois seem to be trending down. We had a little bit of a summer surge. It's still true that in states like New York and countries like Italy, where the virus burned fast, they didn't have a summer surge. That's a hopeful piece of data. And if we don't start to see a fall surge in, say, October, beginning of November, if there's no surge by then, we can probably comfortably conclude that we can fully open in January, right? Without a fall surge in virus cases. I'd also point out that, hospitalizations and deaths the deaths numerically are too high. But we also don't seem to have any control over that. They're steadily way below where they were in April and May. So, as much as it sucks that we're playing armchair epidemiologist here, that's the data we have, right?
Yeah.
So all that tells me is that kids are not at risk. They're not getting sick. If they are getting sick, they're fine. But our teachers are at risk, and it's people, especially 50 and over 60, where like 92% of the cases, I think, are over 50 or over 60, 92% of the deaths. That's where my concerns lie in terms of, trying to carry out how we reopen school. So,
yeah.
So what does our teaching staff look like from that standpoint?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, well, I have 2 answers. One, I don't know that we have a completely accurate understanding, because we did have a number of staff members who were in the process of getting medically certified, and then we decided to go remote, said that's okay. If the kids aren't there, I can either go into my classroom or I can make another decision. I mean, you're probably talking, I'm just trying to think off of the top of my head. I mean, the number is somewhere around maybe 12, 10 to 12 people in that ballpark that are currently have a medical exemption. If I'm thinking about the people on that list, it hits to all fields. I mean, that we have staff members who have medical issues with children or parents, or they themselves. And so because of that, you have parents, or you have teachers that hit all the grade bands, or all the age bands. We have older teachers, we have younger teachers, and everything in between. And so it's not just our older teachers are on that list.
Can we get a breakdown at a high level of what that looks like? Maybe, number of teachers over 60, number of teachers over 50. And then, because even if my wildest predictions come true, we have a vaccine is out by the end of December, and even if we see no wintertime surge in cases, there's still going to be this issue that people over 60 are at high risk of serious illness or death from this virus. And so even then, we've decided to reopen school, I think we're going to have to take a close look at both those at high risk from an age perspective, or high risk because of immunodeficiency orders or whatnot. I think the board is going to need that as we approach these issues.
Okay.
And I agree. If I still wish we could open as soon as we can, but I think we're largely just waiting for data right now.
Yeah, what we could do as part of this conversation on the 29th is just have a more comprehensive conversation about reopening, and just all the different pieces that kind of go into that, because that may impact our decision. We may say, let's just hold off on this, or let's just jump in and start with some small groups. We're going to pass on this reduction in force and start bringing people back. But I think we can have a larger conversation. We'll bring back those descriptive statistics about the teaching staff on the age bands and some of those different pieces. Obviously, nothing identifiable, but we'll bring all that back, and a number of the other questions that were asked as well, I think. And then hopefully through that conversation, we got a very clear understanding about the context around the reductions, but also returning to school.
Okay, so that sounds like a good plan. As part of that discussion, can we talk about, I know we keep bringing up hybrid, and your opinion here matters more than mine, but it seemed to me that hybrid was a huge administrative burden. Can we at least consider, or tell me why we shouldn't consider at our next meeting, just bringing back, kindergarten through third grade or something like that, if we're going to do some sort of partial opening?
Oh yeah, I don't know that I would make the same recommendation today that I would have made in July. So I think that's a really good idea. We've learned a lot from districts that are around us, other districts in the state, other districts in the country, that we can see how they've approached reopening and getting kids back. And absolutely, we'll be prepared for that on the 29th.
Okay.
In the teachers survey, similar to the parent survey, do you ask the question about returning to school?
I'm not sure. I will check. I don't know that we did.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make sure, I know for me personally, we only know the data that is available today. And any decisions that or any conversation that we have 2 weeks from now, any decisions that we make will be made based on whatever data we have as of September 29th. And so part of my decision-making process for me is also taking as much of other factors into consideration as possible, right? Like, I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not an MD, so I don't know what the impact of the current flu season might have, right? Are we prepared to go back into the building and at a moment's notice have to pivot and pull everybody back out? I don't know what the impact of college kids who are in states right now that where testing is not required, or it's a campus that's a hot zone when they all come home, for Thanksgiving, what impact that might have. I have a college freshman right now who is completely remote, but almost all of his classmates have gone off to college and they're currently in hot zones. So I don't know what impact that's going to have on our school district. So I'm just saying all that to say, I don't know today if my personal decision would be any different 2 weeks from now than what it is today or what it was, 4 weeks from now. I just don't know if I have enough, if there is enough information that would make me think differently or make me feel like our students and our teachers are any safer. I do think it's worth us going through the exercise of exhausting all of our efforts based on the data that we do have, right? So what does the survey results say? What does testing say? Is there an opportunity, to your point, Cam, to bring K through 3? I certainly know other school districts that have done K through 2. There's all different types of scenarios that we can think about. There's definitely a case to be made for your K through 2 to have face-to-face time with teachers. I completely get that, but all I'm saying is I want to just make sure we feel like we have enough information to make a decision that we can all live with. We all vote with our conscience. So, I don't want to make any assumptions about teachers and their abilities to do anything under this scenario, or students, right? I know students who are afraid to go back into the building.
Yeah.
So we just have to take all those things into consideration. We should also think about, and this is a side conversation we can talk about later, like what else is on the agenda? Because this sounds like it might be a very lengthy conversation.
Yeah.
And I want to have to shorten the conversation. So I just want to make sure we have time.
Definitely. We'll take a look at that draft agenda over the next day or so.
Dana, when you're getting all of your information together to bring back, can you look into schools that have gone back across the state line that have had luck with what they're doing? And I can't even say luck. I mean, just see what their trends are. I've not seen anything trending ridiculously crazy with transmission of students, even with teachers. I can't even say a handful. I know of one in one particular district. So I'd like to see the data on that just districts around the state. I mean, because I can tell you that the information that I've received, that I've fact checked, I think everyone calls it now, that a lot of districts are back in and they're doing just fine. Not back in totally. They've given the hybrid option as well as the remote option to the parents, which I always think there should be options for parents. So the options have been there for parents. And a sidebar, this would be great if we had grade centers, but we can continue on.
So I'm going to ask, so I need to clarify on that one, right? Because that is a pretty wide ranging request.
It is.
I would ask though, that if we're going to gather data, we gather data from districts that look like us.
Okay.
Because, you and I were kind of having a conversation. The things that can play south of 80 and certainly south of, Bloomington do not play up here.
For
and as I have spoken anecdotally with people in other places, community politics play a role in their decisions and how they're implementing procedures and protocols, right? Willfully disregarding IDPH or ISB guidelines will place the district in a position where we are considerably liable, and there will be nothing to stop those lawsuits if we do something that is outside the guidance. No tort immunity will prevent us from being sued into oblivion. So we just want to make sure that as we're talking to a Catholic school about how they're bringing kids in who have one section per building.
And I was not talking about any parochial schools.
Right.
From the get-go, not at all.
Yeah. So, if we can, and we can certainly do that. I mean, we have our lookalike districts that kind of match our demographics and, numbers and all these other pieces. And if we can, we'll certainly look to those first, and then we'll kind of widen the net after
I don't want
that.
you to spend a whole heck of a lot of time.
No,
I mean,
no, no.
that's not, where you should be, but at least maybe look into it as
Yeah.
just for a reference.
Well, especially if people have good processes out there, if we can
Sure.
borrow any of those, man, that's the name of the game. And I think, not to get on a soapbox, but what really has worked well, and I've said it a number of times, between 153, 233 and us, and even a couple of other districts to the west of us, we've kind of brought into that fold, is really sharing information and identifying the landmines that are out there, but also the places that we're having success. We can try to replicate those in the other districts.
Hey, Dana, again, and I'm not trying to go ahead and stroke you guys tonight too much, but I think your administration and your staff have done a really good job of looking at as much information as you can to present to the board the best possible scenarios regarding a RIF. I think that we were ready to go with opening the schools before, so we were trying to follow, I shouldn't try, but we were following the Illinois public health guidelines as to the letter.
Yep.
It's just something that's really changed in the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks that you guys have missed. Because to the point that Chris made and Carolyn said earlier, I'd hate for us to be spending more time discussing things that we've kind of already talked about. I know all these decisions are tough, but I don't want you guys putting too much effort into things we've already kind of covered, because we're kind of being redundant.
Oh, absolutely. We'll be certainly efficient. I think as I look at this list, frankly, there's a lot of overlap as far as the decision-making process, and the questions that we need to answer, whether it's when we're going to return or a number of the questions that we've identified based on the reduction in force process, they'll help us make good decisions moving forward. So we'll make sure that we don't get too far off the reservation, but that, we're certainly being comprehensive, because really, I want to make sure that the board has everything that's needed, to try to give you guys a crystal ball, bless you, as best I can, so we can anticipate as much as possible, but really just make the best decision based on the best facts that we have and go from there.
Okay,
So I
so
think, go
a
ahead.
lot of stuff
Yep,
to pull
absolutely.
together between now. I mean, so I think maybe, I think over the next 48 hours, or as the week goes by, we may even have more questions or comments or thoughts to throw your way. Maybe we should just
Send them over. Yep, send them over, please. That'd be great, because what we'll do, and we have cabinet tomorrow morning, we'll get together and we'll just start breaking out, the different pieces and kind of allocating the different people who are going to gather the information and who we want to do that. So any questions that you have, obviously, whenever you have them, but just send them over, because they'll inform our work. So thank you.
and if there's anything that you have to share, when you do your memo to the board during the week, I mean, as you get information, you can feel free to start, because it may even jog additional questions or thoughts.
Okay, great. We'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we do not need an exec session. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're okay.
Okay. So if there is nothing else on the agenda, I think we have given Dana and his team many, many things to go and start working on. So we appreciate that, especially knowing that we are asking for so much additional information during the first week of testing.
That's all right. Actually, this is really the good time to do it. And we had a few hiccups today, but really we had a lot of classrooms rolling. It's good to work on this now before all the data is in, because, and I think David was getting to this earlier, we've talked a lot about the data piece, having classroom assessment, Ames Web assessment, and map data, and why it's so important to have multiple data points on those kids this year. So at least I can work on this while we're finishing up the data, and then we'll have that finished so we can really jump into the analysis portion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then if there is nothing else, thanks.
He's at the beach.
Yeah. That means
Oh
it's,
no, I don't have him. Where is he?
The-
Oh, there he is. I wish.
there you go.
Jersey Shore.
I don't want you to fall out the chair, Steve. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay, and you can join Steve at the beach. All right, meeting is adjourned, 7:55 p.m. See you all in a couple of weeks.
Have a great night, everyone. Let me know if you need anything.